Hello, thanks for checking out my first video essay. It's about Hazbin Hotel. Season 2 has now aired in its entirety. Many of you really like the show, and I can see why. There's a lot of fun stuff in it. This video is obviously going to spoil the whole thing, so go and watch it if you want. You don't need to watch it to understand my video, though. There's already a lot of different perspectives floating around on YouTube, so I hope my particular analysis shows you an angle you haven't heard before. As a graduate student of sociology and a teaching assistant, I'm paid to critique. I've been taking a holiday break from my academic essays, but I went and wrote this one for fun. Maybe I just love my job too much. Anyway, in trying out this new medium, I've made my character into a little rantsona here to adhere to the style guides around here. Watching Hazbin Hotel transform from a YouTube video into a syndicated series on a real streaming service has been really fun to watch given my academic background. It's safe to say I've been given a lot more time to think about society than other people might. I've read a lot about what roles fiction can play within society as well. Fiction as a genre is incredibly important for anyone who seeks to change social reality. Immersing yourself in abstract worlds can help us think outside the box. Common sense assumptions are blown away in the realm of fiction. Fictional hell worlds can help us articulate alternatives to the real hell world we're in today. The less oversight a series gets from top down taste setters like studio executives and out of touch corporate leaders, the more weird, alienating, and thought provoking a piece of art can be. Regardless of my personal thoughts about Hazbin's quality, I'm going to keep up with the series since I find its creation to be deeply interesting and exciting. I want more independent animation, adult animation, and queer animation, in that order. Provocative title aside, I'm hoping that the success of Hazbin Hotel represents a real avenue for future showrunners to get their ideas out there and into the mainstream. As someone who really values art and is very worried about the rise of anti-intellectualism, I take all cultural productions very seriously. I'm critical of anyone who advocates for turning your brain off and enjoying the show.
Invites you to turn off your brain.
Come with me.
Escape into the overworld.
Beyond the massive red shrooms.
And just play.
Massive shrooms.
Big old red ones.
Art is about more than escapism. All of my favorite works have, in some way, served as a conversation with the artist about how to live. I mean, returning to that Minecraft example even, remember at the end of the game there's this heartfelt message about the universe loving you and stuff? That's great. All art is valuable, it's all worth talking about. So let's dig into Hazbin. First, I'm going to briefly summarize the narrative of Season 1. Charlie, the main character, is the Princess of Hell. She opens up the titular Hazbin Hotel as a sort of rehab project to help the damned unlearn their sins and hopefully ascend into heaven, freeing them of their eternal punishment. This is supposed to help with overpopulation. This same overpopulation angle is also part of Heaven's justification to send down archangels in annual extermination campaigns. At the end of the first season, after a series of failed negotiations, the gang fights off Heaven's targeted attack on the hotel and puts the exterminations on hiatus. So, let me front load the positives here. The voice acting is very good. Richard Horvitz of Invader Zim and Psychonauts fame did a superb job directing these very talented actors to bring forward some very compelling and emotionally intense performances. The animation, at times, is incredible. There's a lot of really solid sequences here that showcase a mastery of the principles of animation. That's especially apparent in the musical numbers, which are catchy and fun. Some of the actors here have worked in Broadway performances, and that's very apparent if you listen to them. You won't be listening to them, though, because I'm trying to avoid triggering YouTube's excessive copyright protections. Unfortunately, for every positive I've listed here, it's very easy for me to point out a negative that compromises what would otherwise be a really great work. I know it's been discussed a lot, but I'm going to bring up the character designs first. The aforementioned excellent animation is mainly relegated to the more simplified characters. The show often does a lot of these extremely smooth tracking shot turnarounds with Vox, this TV head guy, the main antagonist of Season 2. It looks really cool, and it really draws you in. These are almost exclusive to him, however, which I think is mainly due to how simple his rectangular flat screen head is compared to the rest of the important characters in the show. Look at how cluttered the designs of the main cast are. Alistair is a particularly good example of what I'm saying here. There's so many overlapping elements to his face. His characteristic smile is competing with this monocle of his. This monocle, of course, overlaps his eyes, but his eyes have this eyeshadow that overlaps his hair in a semi transparent overlay. Imagine the style guides that these animators are following when they're drawing this guy thousands of times per episode. I suspect they felt emboldened to do these tracking shots with Vox because of his simplicity, but even then, this guy is covered in detail. He wears a striped shirt underneath his pinstripe suit, he has this little Wi-Fi logo on his chest and hat, and has a red outline on the bright blue lapels to his suit, and this reflective stripe across his face. There's just a lot of particular details that need to be hand-drawn from a lot of different angles and distances as they're warped around by perspective. It's not a good precedent to set up when you pay your animators as little as $35 per second of rough animation. Optimizing your character designs for animation is a bit of a moral thing to do when you have such a small budget. The show is usually animated on twos, that means 12 frames every second. These guys have to draw your characters at least 12 times to get paid that $35 under this model. Make your characters quicker to draw. The architect is no more important than the manufacturer. This next little quip about the character design is a little more subjective, but I'd really like to see more body diversity in the main cast of characters. The most interesting and varied looks in the show are often relegated to the guys who have very few speaking roles or only appear in crowd shots when they get tweened around in music videos. Like, look at this guy. What's his story? I'd argue the lack of diversity here isn't just boring, because it also impedes characterization. The two characters, Vox and Alistair, they've been portrayed as fierce rivals throughout the entire show so far. They have this, like, video killed the radio star motif going on. Alistair is a radio show host from the 1930s and has contempt for new technology. He's supposed to be classic and sophisticated. He has this aura of pretension, and he uses less vulgar language. I thought that was the intent from season 1, but he says fuck a lot in season 2, at least. Vox is the CEO of a tech company, so he's contemporary, loud, and vulgar. He's obsessed with his brand image and wants to appear powerful. He really wants to be better than Alistair in every way. Replace him, even. He wants to be
Just like you, except I'm smarter, sharper, brighter, newer.
If this superficial pretty boy whose biased news network keeps calling buff and athletic was a fitness bro that was super into bodybuilding, it would add some much desired variance to this lineup and make these rivals complement each other in more ways than just wearing opposite colors.
I'm just like you, except I'm blue.
The show even tries to do this to some extent, but it's only when Vox isn't wearing his suit. This is a cartoon. You can exaggerate body proportions in such a way where that would always be apparent from his visual design. Like, look at this. He insults Alistair by saying, "Fuck you, twink." An insult like this would actually have some weight to it if he had some meat on his bones. Like, this is what he looks like, and he's calling Alistair a twink. Whining aside, I now want to talk about a subject that I have a fair bit of knowledge in, and that's ideology. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel wishes to discuss ideology through political satire. That's great! It's the kind of thing I want to see in adult animation. Give your mature audience something to chew on. In the 4th episode, the writers very provocatively compare Vox to Hitler and Trump. I'm not going to bore you to death by cross-analyzing Vox's actions with Brit's defining characteristics or something, because I sort of can't due to the show's world building. Hazbin Hotel takes place in a nonsense society where there's no discernible rules for appropriate conduct or even moral consistency. For example, slavery is deeply embedded into the politics of hell, to the extent that slave owners are considered a unique class of person in the narrative. Certain sinners are considered overlords if they own the souls of other sinners. There's not much room to interpret this as anything other than slavery. They're not subtle. This ownership is visually represented through different forms of bondage. There's imagery of collars, cages, chains, and puppetry. This is evoked whenever a sinner acts in an insubordinate way towards their master. The owning of other people is so normalized in this universe that Charlie, the moral center of the show, willingly employs this kind of labor to run her hotel. Husk, the barkeep, he sold his soul to Alistair, the host of the hotel. His employment here isn't framed as Charlie begrudgingly using a tactic she dislikes for the greater good. She loves this guy. She's regularly charmed by him, and confides in him when she needs help. Violence is also extremely common in this fictional society. The show keeps depicting murder in a slapstick way, but also seeks to shock the viewer with violence in other contexts. It's the same with sexual assault. Sometimes it's a joke, and sometimes it's shocking. So, with all of this in mind, how does the show call Vox a fascist? He calls himself the Fuhrer. Seriously, they just put references to MAGA, colonialism, and the Third Reich in the lyrics, and they call it a day. If you're going to signal political depth so explicitly, you'd better spend your very limited runtime examining the political systems of your story. This isn't subtext, it's just text. The show does portray Vox as a cruel and morally reprehensible person. He kills people indiscriminately. He manipulates his peers and subordinates. He's in an E&M relationship with Valentino, who routinely sexually abuses his employees. Please permit me to do a brief detour here. I need to share a personal grievance of mine with this plot point. Angel Dust's focus episode in Season 1 centers on the routine sexual abuse he faces at his job. Since Valentino literally owns his soul, he's forced to work for his porn company, and he's legally coerced into fulfilling every sexual favor of Val's as well. The music video for this song is so graphic that, at the time of writing, it is the only one that uses a lyric video on Amazon Prime's YouTube channel instead of just showing the clip from the show. After dropping this bombshell on us, this conflict is resolved in the same episode via a duet between Angel Dusk and Husk, where Husk tells Angel he's being a whiny bitch, their words, not mine, because Husk has the same issue. He's a gambling addict. Husk's job is being a bartender. He's not telling Angel how it is. Even if Husk also sold his soul, he can't possibly understand Angel's unique position right here. There's probably still a way out for Angel if he doesn't give up hope, but if you wanted to make a song in which Husk uplifts Angel, have him articulate this instead of this false equivalence. I really dislike the way this subject matter was handled.
Did anyone actually like this?
Okay, back to Vox. He's cruel, he's self-serving to a fault. He only ever does things for his own benefit. Although these traits are certainly antisocial, they're not fascist. Showing us these actions doesn't critique Vox's political ideology, because the show conflates politics with personal vices. This is particularly awkward for Charlie in this season, because she's tasked with proving him wrong. The closest she gets to a sincere criticism of Vox is her condemnation of violence. This is completely arbitrary when referenced to the show's moral core, and even Charlie's entire life's vocation. This project of hers, the Hazbin Hotel, its sole purpose is to get sinners into heaven, and as of the end of Season 2, the only way a sinner has entered heaven is through violence. Seriously, this guy, Sir Pentious, he reverses his sin of cowardice by sacrificing himself in combat to save his friends. Why is Charlie condemning violence here? I was going to make a joke about the Stonewall Uprising and its importance for securing queer rights up here on Earth, but Charlie condemning violence in this hypocritical way is really just so that she can position herself in opposition to Vox without actually getting into his politics. The writing team wants Vox to be this selfish MAGA grifter type, but they give him a morally defensible political stance that represents armed resistance more than fascism. You see, Nazis and MAGA don't target their oppressors, of course. Jewish people and communists weren't controlling the government of Germany. Undocumented migrants and gender ideology aren't destroying America. Fascism as a political identity necessarily blames social problems on these problem populations that aren't actually responsible. Vox's political enemies literally descend from heaven and slaughter the inhabitants of hell indiscriminately every year. When he calls his movement resistance, he's correct. This character has mind control powers. There are so many ways that he can lie to achieve power. Why would you make him a revolutionary freedom fighter? If your antagonist is supposed to represent the antithesis to the message of your show, why is he telling the truth? Is it just dramatic irony? I think it's supposed to be dramatic irony, because the denizens of hell don't know about Vox's ulterior motive of becoming God. Vox is fighting for a righteous cause, but unbeknownst to the masses, heaven feels really bad about genocide. That's their words, not mine. Throughout this season, they treat the knowledge that Sir Pentious was redeemed as some kind of crux to Vox. Charlie considers getting the truth out to be so important, she is willing to collaborate with Vox. She calls him into the hotel to do an exclusive news interview for his biased channel. This scares the shit out of Angel because she's bringing his traumatic work life into his only home. The writers want Pentious' redemption to be proof to the sinners that Charlie's method works, and that what Vox is doing is wrong. But why would it prove that? Let's do a little thought experiment here. Imagine that I'm a denizen of hell, living as a second-class citizen, as punishment for my life on Earth. Imagine if 1 year, on the dreaded Extermination Day, an archangel kills my beloved girlfriend. I would want to kill the people responsible. Nothing would be off the table for making the people of that nation pay. If I was told that through violent combat somebody ended up ascending and living in eternal paradise, if I was told that killing others for justice can be interpreted as virtuous by some mystical property that even heaven doesn't understand, I would be even more likely to take up arms. Seriously, consider my two avenues for social mobility here. Option 1, I could kick my fellow sinners down and enslave them to become an overlord. I'd live a life of constant conflict as I kill other overlords to try and fight for my land. Eventually, I'd double die in turf war, and since I've lived a life of sin, I'd probably just have my soul annihilated or something. For option 2, I could avenge my beloved by joining forces with my fellow sinners and fighting for those actually responsible. The worst case scenario here is that I would die in combat and go to heaven, literally living in eternal paradise. If I wasn't fucking stupid, then I'd only have one choice. To be fair, we do learn this season that this only worked for Pentious because his original sin was cowardice, I think. The point still stands that, so far, throughout all of human history, this is the only way someone was redeemed. Vox could very easily highlight this truth, and he would have a more coherent argument than Charlie does. If you wish to critique fascism with your show, don't make up a world where fascism has material evidence to justify it. I understand this isn't my show. If the writers want to tell a personal story instead of a socio-political one, that's up to them. Unfortunately, they really struggle with telling a story about character-driven drama as well. So if the show doesn't examine the political reasons why its main antagonist is wrong, what does it spend its very short runtime doing? It shows us two twinks dominating each other with surface-level references to kink. And that's cute, I guess.
You know, I mean, let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned. You know, but I ain't spending any time on it because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
I'm kidding around, but most of Vox's focus this season centers his personal insecurities and desires. His rivalry with Alistair is very thoroughly examined this time around. There's this flashback where we learn of his one-sided crush on Al, and I think we're supposed to see the soft and vulnerable side of this avaricious serial murderer. I find this explanation pretty unsatisfying, especially after finding out how Vox spent his time on Earth. It's difficult for me to believe that Vox was an insecure entrepreneur trying to put himself out there with a promising startup. This is a cult leader who systematically killed his way to the top of the corporate ladder and presumably died at the same time as all his loyal followers. Did any of them go to hell with him? You'd think he'd have no shortage of souls to help him kill his way back into power. Is that bony radio ass just so enticing it's the only thing that manages to make him shy and humble? After deliberately losing a fight to Vox, Alistair spends half the season stuck on this chair in the corner, quipping about him about how he relies on others. That's funny and all, but thematically, it's way less rich than the show's central themes about morality. It reminds me a lot of Season 1, where this same thing was happening in Episode 3. The A-plot has the gang figuring out the world building of the show, figuring out redemption. But competing with this is the B-plot, where these two are quipping at each other again. They try to be dramatic about Vox disrespecting his friends in this season, but they really fail to make me sympathize with these horrible people. In this musical number, when I think about the future, these two are doing villain song stuff together, and Vox and Alistair are giggling with each other while the camera pans over to Valentino. The way this is framed, it's almost like it's like he's cheating on him or something. It hits like a fourth wall break. Valentino sings about feeling neglected. He's worried that Vox won't have time for him anymore when they do their master plan. I don't care if Valentino feels neglected. This man is a rapist. No amount of singing or Vox racism will make me change my mind. The final episode is sort of the death blow to the show's political themes. The season wraps up with Alistair freeing himself of the deals he made with his two owners, and he defeats Vox, stopping his revolution against Heaven. To do this, he coerces Charlie into declaring that Vox is the most powerful demon in hell. And I think that literally makes Vox the strongest demon in hell in, like, material terms. Because after Charlie says this, Alistair's contract with Rosie is broken, because she promised Alistair he'd be the strongest as long as his soul belonged to her. Up until this point, the monarchy that technically rules hell was largely characterized as symbolic. About halfway through this season, we learn that Lucifer, the devil from the Bible, isn't allowed to harm any sinner as part of his contract with heaven. It's in the very terms of his punishment, so he's not allowed to lay a finger on Vox. Last season, he was roughing up Alistair in that catchy swing rhythm song he had. He even used his powers to do this. You may argue that the visuals of the songs don't actually translate to real actions these characters take in the show, and I'd be willing to agree with you. However, Lucifer's angel powers vaporize multiple sinners instantaneously in the final episode here. Vox hooks him up to a cannon to do this. You're telling me that Lucifer has been around since original sin in the Garden of Eden, and he hasn't been able to identify a loophole to the deal he has with heaven? You'd think he'd think of something. I'd be willing to overlook this if the writers wanted a more clear parallel to contemporary politics in the real world. But Charlie's declaration powering up Vox here shows us that the royal family does, in fact, have incredible supernatural powers. Is this supposed to represent how endorsing a political candidate can raise support for them? I don't think so, because this is ultimately Vox's undoing since it frees Alistair. I really don't think this is a visual metaphor. To conclude, I think this season overall embodies a very good example of style over substance. The presentation is exceptional. A lot of very talented people were involved in this work. I just wish it had more thematic depth, because I'm a nerd who believes in fiction's emancipatory potential. I know it's a cartoon, but it's for adults. It can be deep. I think Hazbin Hotel is a flawed but sincere piece of media. I tore into it for the last, let me check, 25 minutes or so, because I love independent animation. It sort of hurts to see such a unique show fall short of being great. I don't think you're in the wrong for liking this show. There's a lot of things to like about this show, and I want people to find value in it. The only ones in the wrong are the showrunners for paying their animators so little. It's not the workers' fault for the show's shortcomings. If you disagree with any takes of mine, you're more than free to chat about them in the comments. Discourse is good. If there's any holes in my argument, I want to know about them. And that's pretty much it. Here's to season 3 maybe being a little better.